Welcome to the SBI podcast, offering CEOs, sales and marketing leaders ideas to make the number.
Welcome SBI listeners, readers, and viewers. My name is Greg Alexander, and I am the CEO of SBI, a management consulting firm specializing in sales and marketing, dedicated to helping you make your number. This is the weekly SBI podcast, and its purpose is simple, and it is to help you make your number by getting your peers to share with you how they make theirs. Today's guest is Mark Lenhard, and he is the Senior Vice President of Strategy at Magento. If you're not familiar with Magento Commerce, as they're officially known, they provide an open source digital commerce solution to 250,000 companies and was recently spun out of eBay. Mark is responsible for helping Magento's leadership develop and execute the company's multi-year strategy. And before this, he led strategy at JPMorgan Chase and PayPal. And get this, he is no dummy, for he got his undergrad at Yale and he has an MBA from Stanford. So Mark, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Greg. I'm happy to be on, and thanks for inviting me.
Okay, great. All right, today's show is meant to help you do two specific things. First, we're going to discuss how to grow your company's revenues faster than your industry's growth rate. And second, we're going to discuss how to grow your company's revenues faster than your competitors. To do this, you need a revenue growth strategy and an execution plan. But today's show is going to be focused on the first part of it, which is strategy development. So Mark, let's jump into it with my first set of questions tied to the first objective, which is growing revenues faster than your industry. So for the benefit of the audience, would you start by describing what your industry is or how you define the Magento's industry?
Sure. Well, you're starting off with actually what's actually a pretty tough question, and it's something that I know in both prior lives and here at Magento sometimes we struggle with a little bit. It sounds like a pretty easy, straightforward question, but actually trying to really define and clarify where we're operating can be a little more difficult than it sounds. So I'd like to say we touch a lot of industries and do work in a lot of different areas, but I don't think you're going to let me get away with that answer today, as much as I'd like to. So if you had to force me, I'd say, look, there's a couple of really concrete area where we play, which is around e-commerce platforms and order management systems. We define as OMS. So it's really helping retailers, both B2B and B2C retailers, deliver commerce platforms, both online as well as through our order management system, offline and online. Really deliver their business.
Okay, very good. So e-commerce and order management. So how big is this market?
So it's currently it's been growing really rapidly. It's currently about estimated to be globally about $5 billion, and we're definitely a global player. And that's for the e-commerce and OMS platforms directly. Although our ecosystem plays both in the services and ancillary revenues around that, and that the size of that when you expand into those, you're probably looking at more at about a $20 to $25 billion market globally.
Okay, but the core market's at $5 billion. So what is the industry's organic growth rate now, and what is it forecasted to be in the future?
Yeah, as you can imagine, the e-commerce omni-channel space has been growing pretty rapidly. It's in the past grown as high as anywhere from 20 to 25% a year. Now it's steady at around 12%, forecasted to grow at kind of that 10 to 15% over the next few years.
Okay.
So still pretty healthy growth rate.
Yeah, so a big market that's growing at 12%, which is fantastic. Okay. Let's take it down one more notch. So describe for the audience your customer by profiling the person who buys your product.
Yeah, good question. Like any enterprise or B2B sale, there's obviously a number of people involved in the buying process, or who like to influence the buying process. Let's say. But the key ones for us are really the top of the house, the CEO, who's typically involved in the final decision in any commerce platform purchase, and then at the heart of that process is really the CTO, the technology side of the house, as well as our VP of called the head of the e-commerce business, who's really actively involved in kind of making those decisions on a day-to-day basis. They obviously have overlapping priorities, but nonetheless, each of them is looking for some pretty distinct things that, that's where we've actually spent a lot of time trying to make sure that we craft the right messaging and the right, we're really speaking each one of those segments when we're out talking to them. It's probably one of the most important steps that anyone can take as they really start to define their sales and marketing strategy.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so let's do a quick recap here before I get into the next two questions, because they're the most important two in this segment. So we've got a company that operates in the e-commerce and order management space. It's a $5 billion core business with a growth rate of 12%. The customer is an executive. It's the CEO, the CTO, or VP of e-commerce. All right, let's jump down to the demand drivers. So that growth rate is pretty good, 10 to 15% for the foreseeable future. So what's driving all the demand?
Good question. There's some classic stuff. Obviously the overall growth of the economy, particularly around since a good chunk of our business, our businesses are B2C. Obviously consumer spend and growth of the retail market impacts that. Globalization is another classic one. The more global the economy gets, the more e-commerce is becoming more and more important. But one of the core things is actually is the rate of replatforming that's happened now that we've kind of had our first cycle, the first 10 years of e-commerce. It's not surprising that about half of retailers are on platforms that are 3 years or older, and therefore it's not surprising that about half are looking to replace those platforms or upgrade those platforms over the next 3 years. The rate of technology change has been so rapid, particularly over the last 5 years, that even the platform you may have purchased 3 years ago or 5 years ago may be dated now and may be upgradable, but more likely than not, folks are looking to replatform and really upgrade, and that's driving a lot of this. In addition to, just the overall growth rate of our segments of the market.
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected that. In my mind, for some reason, I still think of e-commerce as a emerging industry, and I wouldn't have thought it was 10 years old. And we're at the state now where people are doing this for the second and third time. And replatforming. So that's good context for us. For the benefit of the audience, maybe draw a clearer line between globalization and its effect on demand for your industry, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, globalization as what we're seeing with a lot of our customers, it should come as no surprise that particularly those that are online, they may have an offline presence as well. But as shipping and logistics become easier, as folks are looking more and more to purchase goods wherever they may happen to be in the world, and as retailers are trying to grow and expand, they're in general looking, in many cases, outside of their home country. Payments is becoming easier, shipping and logistics are becoming easier, and retailers want to expand. They, one of the easiest way, or not easiest, but one of the best ways you can grow is find a whole new customer group to sell to. Well, if you're in the U.S., you can open up to China or Europe, and if you're in Europe, you can vice versa. And so more and more retailers are looking to grow outside of their home countries, and they want to leverage their e-commerce platform to do that. And more consumers are getting comfortable doing that and are able to do that because they've got shipping and logistics to back that up, and payments is becoming more and more seamless. Okay.
And is it safe to say that these two demand drivers, replatforming, and globalization, are mutually exclusive, or are people that are buying your product because of globalization, are they buying it for the first time, or is it part of the replatforming exercise?
Oh no, they're definitely not mutually exclusive. A lot of these are overlapping,
okay.
And absolutely. And so in any of these decisions, we obviously have a rate of new growth of retailers out there who are starting out on platforms, and that would be mutually exclusive. But most retailers today that have been in business for a while already come with legacy platforms. Some obviously more sophisticated than others, but in general, there's a good healthy chunk of overlap there between those between those two drivers.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so here's the most important question for this segment. So for Magento to grow faster than the industry, as you just described it, what are the critical success factors, and how did you determine them?
Well, that's I think that's a $64,000 question. We're still certainly. I wouldn't say I wouldn't put myself out of a job and said we definitely got it all determined. We'll always be working on this and evolving as we grow and as the industry changes. But a few key things that are really, really important to us. Obviously, I think it goes without saying, first and foremost, is the product, right? We've got to have a really great product that is cutting edge and stays up with the market. And so we spent a lot of time and effort to make sure we're evolving our product, listening to our customers, listening to our ecosystem, and really making sure we're staying best in class there. And have the right product strategy so that we can keep up with where the market's going. I'd say the second thing, and this is a little bit of a uniqueness to us, but because we have an open source product, open source technology, one of our biggest both competitive advantages and kind of success factors that we look after is actually our ecosystem itself. So we have a number of solution partners and technology partners in the industry, as well as all of our Magento certified developers out there, and the health and growth of that ecosystem is of paramount importance to us. They're our biggest evangelists, some of our biggest salesmen, some of our, the guys that actually implement our platform at our ultimately the end customers for both us and the ecosystem. And so making sure we're well connected to that ecosystem, it continues to grow and flourish is of utmost importance to us. And then, last but not least, it wouldn't sound surprising, but making sure we've got the right sales and marketing team together, structure and strategy. No one ultimately tells a story better than you do yourself, and so making sure we're getting out in front of customers and doing the right things, both our existing customers but also future clients, and telling a really clear message there.
Okay, fantastic. All right, my audience is composed of CEOs and sales and marketing leaders. And surprisingly, when I ask them these questions, the answers are not very good, especially the last question regarding critical success factors, which you were able to answer very clearly. You need a highly differentiated product, you got to nurture this ecosystem, and you've got to be excellent in sales and marketing. So audience members, if you're asking yourself these questions right now, and you don't like your answers, it might be helpful to have one of our consultants come see you. If this interests you, go to salesbenchmarkindex.com/contact and request some time from one of our teammates. Let's take a quick break. You are listening to the SBI podcast. Back in a bit. You are watching SBI TV. This is a monthly web TV show featuring guests just like you, executives trying to grow their revenues. Each month, you can peek behind the scenes and watch your peers discuss their strategies for how they make their numbers. You are not going to want to miss this. Welcome back. My name is Greg Alexander, and I'm the CEO of SBI, and my guest today is Mark Lenhard, who is the head of strategy at Magento Commerce. Today we are discussing how to grow revenues faster than your industry and your competitors. Before the break, Mark and I discussed company revenue growth relative to industry revenue growth. And during this segment, we're going to discuss company revenue growth relative to competitor revenue growth. So Mark, what percent market share do you have today?
So Magento is it's the leading e-commerce platform out there. We're the number one platform in the IR 1000, have about 20% market share there. And we're equivalently in the IR B2B 300. We're also the number one platform. It varies. Our specific market share country to country varies a little bit, but globally we've got anywhere from 20 to 50% market share of e-commerce platforms.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, and how many competitors do you have, and what is your share relative to them? I know that you're the market leader, but 20 to 50% depending on geo. Something tells me that maybe in some geos you might not be the leader. Is that true, or is that not true?
No, in general, we're a leader across the board. There's a number of players, both that serve the larger end of the market, the big corporate customers, and then some that are serving the small businesses all the way down to the micro enterprises. If you're just doing $10,000 or $20,000 a year of sales, so it's a pretty long list, and there are some regional players out there in general, but. In pretty much all the markets across the globe, we stand out as being the top platform.
Okay.
Now our sweet spot's really in the middle market is kind of where we focus, but because of the size of that market and the success in a lot of these markets, we tend to be number one.
Okay. So I did a poor job of asking that question. Let me give it another shot. So is there an established industry structure whereby companies can be put into strategic market groups? Or is it a situation where there's literally hundreds of players and it's a highly fragmented market and it's tough to do that?
No, I mean there's definitely some structure around it. In general, the industry tends to look at itself by size of merchant or size of business, anywhere from kind of smaller sub $1 million, sub $5 million merchants, all the way up to $75 and $100 million and up. And then there tends to be a lens around, is it B2C or B2B customers? And then even within that, you have some verticals around, within B2C, you've got fast fashion or other industry verticals. And then, of course, you've got other ways to cut it, which is, are you online only versus online and offline? So, sorry, long answer to a pretty simple question, which is, there are a lot of different ways you can cut up the industry, but most of the time it's done by size of merchant, and that's B2B or B2C.
Yeah, it's actually the length of your answer was illustrative because it seems like an easy question, right? But it really isn't, because it depends on how you slice and dice and define the different sub-industries within your macro industry. And I'm asking these questions because I'm attempting to teach today on the call to the audience that might be focused on this issue. So I'm being deliberate in those questions to try to make sure everybody understands what types of questions they should be asking, which leads me to the next question, which is a little academic, but I do want to work some of the theory into this. So the theory is, there are three forms of strategic advantage, and we're talking about strategy right now, when dealing with competition. So the first is product differentiation. So you invest heavily in R&D, and your product is superior to your competitors, as validated by your customers willing to buy it from you and potentially pay a premium for it. Second is price, or sometimes said differently, cost. So think of Southwest Airlines as the go-to example here, where they've streamlined their cost structure so they can offer competitive fares to flyers and beat their competition on price. And then lastly is the customer experience. So these folks know so much about their customers, and the experience with them, with their customers, is so good that they win over their competitors just based on the customer experience. And this decision, and I know this is overly simplifying, but we are on a 30-minute podcast, so I had to do that. This decision has a massive ripple effect when we get to the functional strategies of product marketing, sales, and HR, which we'll get to in a moment. But what is if I had to put you into one of those three categories, which category are you in?
So, as I started off the podcast, it's hard to put us in one. But if I had to choose one, I think where we're more primary, it's around product differentiation and how we're structured there. So given that Magento Commerce is an open source company, and we have a product that is very open sourced and have a very large ecosystem that contributes to that product. It really enables our product to be incredibly flexible, a really true platform that the ecosystem can build upon, and so that really enables kind of really mass customization and therefore globalization of our product. And it's one of the reasons why we've got such strong market share in so many countries across so many verticals, industry verticals. It's because of this ecosystem that enables us to really build a strong, scalable product that can be customized and is really flexible on a global and industry basis.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm going to reveal my ignorance here, and that is where I'm going with this line of questioning is, if you're sitting in the CEO seat or if you're in Mark's seat, the strategy seat, you're trying to figure out how to allocate your resources. I mean, at the core of strategy, that's what it's about. It's about allocating people, money, and time. So if you're a product company, if that is your source of competitive differentiation, you can have a superior product, then typically what you see there is a large research and development budget, which is usually expressed as a percentage of revenue, and larger than the industry and your competitors on a relative basis, because that's your source of competitive differentiation. In contrast, if let's say you competed on price, you might have a large procurement group who are just masterful at managing cost of goods sold and automating supply chains and things of that nature. So you can kind of get a feel for the theory. What strikes me as unique about your situation is that you are open source. And my limited understanding of open source means that the development of the product is really in the community, not in the company. So does that mean that you don't invest heavily in R&D, or am I not looking at this correctly?
So it's a combination. We do invest very very heavily in R&D on our core platform. But given how fast the industry is moving, and if I'm a CEO of a retailer or a B2B organization, I want to be able to keep up with all that's going on and be able to really customize what I'm doing around that. And so by buying Magento plus then leveraging the ecosystem to do some customization, I can get kind of best of breed services built right in on a platform that's really scalable, has heavily R&D invested in it to make it an open platform so that it can keep up with the demands. But then those individual things that need to be customized or things to be kept up to speed with that, the ecosystem can help do that. So It's a combination of the two.
Okay, so continuing along with this. So you're a company that competes on product differentiation, and you're investing heavily in R&D, so you truly have a differentiated product. Now let's think about that strategic decision and pull that through this challenge of growing revenue faster than your industry and faster than your competitors. So when you think about your competitors, are you investing more in R&D than they are? Is there enough transparency in your space to know that, or is it still somewhat of a guess?
No, I think across our ecosystem, absolutely we are. So we've got about 50 to 60,000 developers globally that work on the Magento, work on the platform itself, as well as all the customization goes into it. So as an ecosystem, that's where it's hard for me to separate out Magento and our core platform from our ecosystem, because anyone that buys us kind of gets the whole ecosystem. And absolutely on a global basis with all the R&D that's done by both us directly and our ecosystem, absolutely we're out investing others.
Okay, so let's carry that forward down to marketing, and we'll get to sales in a second. So I'm imagining now, as you develop your marketing strategy, so this is a functional strategy that needs to plug into your corporate strategy, which is based on product differentiation, that your marketing strategy is mainly focused on educating the marketplace on the uniqueness of your product. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think we're a little bit different in that we see ourselves as kind of having three broad customer segments. One is obviously the merchant itself, the ultimate buyer of the product. But then we have two other customer segments, which include the solution integrators that actually are building, our solution partners that are building a lot of these websites and doing a lot of the customization. And then the developers and technology partners themselves that actually work on the Magento platform and build integrations into it and build their own products off of it. And so we see ourselves as really, from a marketing point of view, we have a very distinct marketing strategy because we're not just selling to the end consumer there. We're also want to make sure that our ecosystem understands what we're doing and is ready to not only understand it fully, but also be able to sell it themselves, because a lot of the solution partners are out. They're our number one sales channel and actually are out selling Magento as well. So it's a little bit more of a complicated sales and marketing strategy than I think a lot of other companies.
Yeah, no question, because you got to educate the end customer, the partner, and the ecosystem. So I'm assuming then the sales strategy reflects the marketing strategy, and that you have to go after those kind of three stakeholder groups with your sales resources as well.
Absolutely, no. It mirrors it. It mirrors it perfectly, and obviously we have our own direct salespeople too. But in general, they're not. They're out supporting our channel sales and talking to merchants directly. But the role is really to help support our ecosystem in doing that.
Right. So I hope the audience is connecting the dots here. But just in case they're not, and we just learned something really important. So what Mark just showed us, how his company is in strategic alignment. How is that true? Well, they know that they're a sell-through model, not just a sell-to model. They've got to, yes, educate and sell to the end customer, but the partner community, systems integrators, and the developers in the ecosystem are just as, if not more, important. So they've modified their marketing and sales approach to do that. And that makes perfect sense, given the fact that their source of competitive advantage, or one of them, I should say, is product differentiation. Okay, so that was a great segment. I really appreciate all that, and hopefully that was a great use case for the audience to pay attention to there. All right, if you want to grow faster than your competitors, and you want a methodology to do so, download SBI's revenue growth methodology at salesbenchmarkindex.com/2016-report. We are rocking and rolling today. This is the SBI podcast. Back in a bit.
Making your number is hard. Your problems are complex. Complex problems need complex solutions. Introducing the SBI Magazine. Read in-depth stories written by award-winning journalists about how your peers have overcome their problems to make the numbers. When you need more than a tweet, social post, or blog article, turn to the SBI Magazine. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com to subscribe.
Welcome back. My name is Greg Alexander, and my guest today is Mark Lenhard. And today we are discussing how to grow revenues faster than your industry and your competitors. We had a rich discussion in segment 1 and especially in segment 2. Let's conclude with some action steps. So Mark, try to summarize what we just discussed, which I know will be hard to do, into 3 actions an audience member can take immediately.
Yeah, sure. No, I think it is hard, but I think if I had to boil it down to 3, I would say first and foremost, make sure you clearly define where you're playing and understand your market, and don't be distracted by trying to boil the ocean or define your market too large. Pick a market, define that, dive in, understand kind of where that market's going, what's driving that market, who the buyers are, who the customers are, who the competitors are, and really get a good understanding around that market, and don't be afraid to focus. Second, I would say make sure you really understand your key strengths and where your competitive advantages are, and play to them. Focus on the strengths as opposed to I think some of the weaknesses, and really play up where you think your competitive advantages are, where you think they need to be. And then finally, the third thing I would say is make sure that you then translate that into action plans for all the various different departments in your organization. From sales to HR, they need to really understand, the market you're playing in and what your competitive advantages are, and therefore where you're gonna focus, to make sure that everyone's operating together and going toward those same goals. The worst thing can be is if 2 different departments are working under a different set of assumptions, it can lead to obviously not the most optimal outcomes. And so spending time on that communication is really, really important.
Yeah. Excellent takeaway value. Know your markets, understand your strengths and focus on them, and then make sure you marry up your strategy with an execution plan that can cascade through the entire organization at the functional level so that this actually comes to life. Great advice. All right, here are my 2 cents. Let me speak individually to the 3 types of SBI viewers, listeners, and readers. First, I'm going to speak to you, Mr. or Mrs. CEO. Go out and hire an A player as your SVP of strategy. You just heard from one who led strategy at JP Morgan Chase, PayPal, and now at one of the hottest companies out there, Magento Commerce. If you don't know what good looks like, you now have a template in Mark. And if you need help finding one, call us and we might know a few people to send your way. Second, to my sales leaders on the show today, pick your head up. Go build a relationship with your head of strategy and make sure your sales strategy is aligned with his corporate strategy. If it is not, you will not grow your revenue faster than your industry and your competitors. And lastly, third, to my marketing leaders on the show today, crack open your marketing budget. And for every expenditure, ask yourself one question. Is this going to unequivocally help us grow faster than our industry and our competitors? If you are unsure, don't spend the money. Reallocate your budget right now. Mark, I want to thank you for letting me interview you. You've added quite a bit to our body of knowledge here, and everybody listening learned a lot. So thanks for being on the show.
Thanks a lot, Greg. I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. All right, and a big shout out to you, SBI Nation, wherever you are today. This show has become #1 in its category based on the download numbers. And we like being #1, and we will show you our appreciation by having great guests on the show like we did today. Until next time, I wish you good luck as you try to make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on SBI services, case studies, the SBI team and how we work, or to subscribe to our other offerings, please visit us at salesbenchmarkindex.com.